Hi, Pam. It's
Hey,
Preston.
hey,
Can you hear me?
Preston. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Should I undo my video? Do you guys all just come in without video?
I normally don't do my video. We usually just have or at least over the last few months, we've just had the council members on video. So that's kind of been the practice for now. I think you're fine being on video since you're an actual presenter, but I think we can just let council make that call once we start in about.
Okay, yeah, it might be nice for them to actually see me talk and then I
Yeah.
close my video, but I
So
at least,
we've had trouble with Zoom meetings. Oh, we haven't had trouble, but we've tried to implement all the precautions to avoid, maybe you know this, but like the Zoom bombing stuff that's been happening, especially to local government meetings where folks
oh,
get on and are just
really?
trying to take over the meeting. Yeah. So we've had to implement some measures kind of similar to what other communities are doing. So we have this precaution in place that doesn't allow attendees to unmute themselves. So um, I'll probably just leave you unmuted for now unless you want to be on mute for the time being. And then when the
Well, tell
time
you
comes.
what, let's just chat until another person comes on and then you can mute me again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm fine with leaving you unmuted. I was just letting you know that if you end up getting muted, you're not going to be able to unmute yourself until you raise your hand or it's time for you to start talking and then I'll unmute you, if that makes sense.
Thanks for the heads up. I figured that out right away. I was going to say hi and I couldn't. Yeah, I've been cavalier about all those security protocols. It's like until you get bombed, you don't realize how awful it's going to be. So I've just let it roll. But now Zoom is requiring that you either have password protection or sometime in mid-July, they're actually going to take you into like the waiting
The
room.
waiting room, right? I just read that today or maybe yesterday. So I think it's a good little protocol to implement for Zoom. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hello.
Hey there.
There we go.
Yes, and Russ, I'm Pam. I'm kind of bombing your meeting today, but in an official way. So hi, good to meet you.
Nice
Great to
you.
meet you, Pam. Thanks for being here.
I'm just honored you let me.
Preston, you want to give it a couple more minutes? What do you think?
I think let's do 90 seconds, Mayor.
Okay. Kevin, are you at home or are you on the road?
Believe it or not, I am at home.
Unbelievable.
How about that, right?
How about that?
It's great. It's great to see you all.
Great to see you.
Good to see you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Welcome
yeah.
home.
Thank you. That was a long one. That was a tough one.
Was it?
Lots of humidity. Lots of humidity.
Never fun,
No, no.
especially when it's either really hot or really cold.
Bingo. Exactly. Exactly. But, you know, an upside being with these electronic meetings, I was able to make all of those while on the road. So that's fantastic.
I was thinking about that. That was a little bonus, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Didn't expect a trip of that length to fall in my lap. I guess we all didn't expect a lot of things, but yeah, you know,
How long were you gone for?
just under 7 weeks,
Wow.
47 days. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you back for a while?
I should be. I should be. I might have to run away quickly for a little bit, but it should be relatively quick and painless.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's nice to be home. It's nice to see, you know I hear a lot of people kind of commenting that the county is a little loose in regulation with face masks, but compared to Texas or Tennessee or anywhere else, everybody's on point. And so that's kind of nice. Yeah.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, Preston, you let me know when you want to start her off.
You know, I think I'm comfortable moving forward now. If you are mayor, we can certainly, just want to be respectful of everybody's time, but if we can certainly give it a couple more minutes if you'd like to.
Well, why don't we give it to 6:05 in case, I know Eric's probably scrambling to get home. Hopefully Beth's on her way as well. We'll give it another minute. Well, why don't we go ahead and kick it off, just rather than sit around waiting any longer. I will call this special Ridgway Town Council meeting to order Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. It's 6:06. We have a roll call, please.
Councilors Cheek,
Are here.
Grambly,
Here.
Lakin, not present. Meyer,
Here.
Schuyler,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson is absent. Mayor Clark.
Here. Okay, so this is a hopefully short meeting just to get some things taken care of. Preston, should we go ahead and start off with in the order you've got them on here on the agenda?
Yes, sir. That'd be great. So first one up is the review and action on request for a waiver of fees to use Hartwell Park in the performing arts stage for worship, faith-based gatherings. And we do have Pastor Pam with the United Church of the San Juans with us. Hi, Pam. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Pam, there's the introduction for you. I'll actually let you kind of go ahead and detail the request that you have put before Pam and myself. I think last week, or maybe early. Well, I guess it's Tuesday, so it was last week that we had talked this through a little bit, and we were able to put it on this special meeting agenda since we had to meet. So, Pam, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Preston, and thanks to all of you for letting me get your attention on this issue right away. You're probably way more aware about all of these COVID guidelines than I am, and churches have the ability now to open up to the capacity they can handle with physically distancing between families of 6 feet, which is great news for us, but our sanctuary is small and probably we can only safely fit around 40 people in our sanctuary. And typically in the summer months, our worship attendance is around 100. And we recently did a survey of our members to say, hey, as we navigate this COVID stuff, what matters to you? 50% are going to continue to worship at home because their vulnerability is too great, which means we expect maybe 70% of that 100 to want to worship regularly. So with one service, like we always had, we can't accommodate our population. And in the same survey, we said to them, would you like us to pursue worship at church, worship in Hartwell Park, or worship in some kind of drive-in venue where you stay in your cars? 56% said Hartwell Park compared to 30% at our church. So they all, most of us are older adults, so we have some vulnerability on board anyway, and everybody knows it's safer to gather outside than inside because of airflow. And even though inside we're taking all kinds of precautions, we'd love to be able to worship in Hartwell Park for the safety's sake and to accommodate our fuller numbers, even though with only 70% of our folks coming back to physical in-person worship, it might only be 70 people, give or take a few walk-in visitors. But for us, like everybody else, this pandemic has hit our financial bottom line. Our giving has dropped off by about 1/3 because we don't tend to give when we're not here at church. So the means to afford the $300 use of stage fee per week is prohibitive for us. So I'm just here to ask, might you waive the park use fees for us or for other faith communities who might want to use the park for their worship services, so that we'd be able to use it? You're right across the street from our church, and our worship services are 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. We've been studying up on how we do physical setup to keep people physically distanced. We have lots of masks, so people would be masked. We'd have, probably half a dozen or more people kind of managing the crowd to keep the protocols in line. We have our own sound equipment, but we need electricity for that. What we're thinking is going to be an abbreviated 35 to 45 minute worship experience. So 10 o'clock is the worship time. We'd be breaking down by 11 o'clock and out of the park. And so that's basically the ask, a waiver for fees. And then if you grant the waiver, I'd want to talk to, I think it's Pam Kraft at the town, about how we could manage some signs to tell, like the farmer's market, to tell people wear masks, maintain physical distancing, things like that. And we also are thinking that we would use some kind of little utility flag markers to indicate this is how far apart you need to sit. People would bring their own chairs, and it'd be safer because we're outside, but also because people would bring their own chairs, so we're not touching communal stuff. So, any questions for me?
Okay, thanks, Pam. I guess I would start out with just wondering, will there be singing? Will there be some, either a choir or the congregation singing?
So we right now are just using small ensembles. So the biggest ensemble on stage would probably be a quartet. But Tanner Kingery actually had, when I asked a question about singing in the park, he said, I think you can sing in the park, but people would be masked. So it would be kind of pitiful singing, but they would be able to sing. But we're imagining that it will be the 1, 2, 3, or 4 singers on the stage mic'd who will carry the congregation song for us. So most of the music will be instrumental, and then maybe a quartet piece, maybe 2 congregational songs if we think they would even try.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, my question was less about whether or not the protocol allows it, more just the noise impact on the neighbors on Sunday morning. Not that I think that's a big impact. But anybody else have any questions for Pam?
Seems like a reasonable request.
Yeah, seems.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that, of course, is an issue is just whenever we waive fees, and the fees are in place obviously because we do have actual costs. You know, them being able to provide their own sound equipment and just plug into the power at their stage certainly helps. And I would just suppose that if they commit to making sure they clean up and leave it just like they found it, that would be minimal impact on town. But you know, what always comes to my mind is, okay, we grant a waiver to these guys. What's to say we're not going to get bombarded with waiver requests? And then what do we do? I guess I would consider I don't know, off the top of my head, maybe like a waiver for 6 or 8 weeks to see how it goes. And go from there, or I'd be interested in hearing if any of you have any other ideas.
I guess for me, the other question would be is if Pam started this off, would there be other churches who would be looking to do the same thing? And I think in what Pam referenced, she would be willing to potentially share the park. But that would be another concern. And then the other question would be, besides just the electricity, would be how much coordination would you be expecting from the town? You mentioned things like banners and signs and flags, and would the church be providing all that, or would the town be expected to be helping in coordinating that?
I think the town would help us figure out how to access power, and everything else will provide. So it's kind of labor intensive for us. So we're hoping that you would give us a green light and we'd be able to try it out on July 5th and see if over time we could streamline our protocol. And we've got plans for who is going to take the signs, who is going to mark out we said 12-foot distancing just to accommodate family groups up to 4 or 5. Who's going to set up the monitors and the speakers, and yeah. So it's labor intensive, but that labor's on us, other than a couple of phone calls just to know what we can and can't do.
Understood. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess in my thinking about this, my thought early on as the governor's orders were being amended every week or so, it does seem to me, we all know that being outside is the safest place for any sort of gathering, any kind to occur. I assume you guys have all seen the same photos. I've seen aerial shots of some city parks where somebody's gone to the trouble of painting circles on the grass. I don't know if they're 6-foot radius, 12-foot diameter or what, but, and just laying out the entire park, just the kind of striping paint you use for a soccer field or something with circles like that. And, whether we'd want to go that far, whether the church could help us with that. I know we could certainly most likely access the striping equipment that the Erie County Soccer Association uses to stripe their fields. Yodi over at the firehouse usually does that for them, so we could explore that. I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
Would there be a need for any sort of a liability waiver for us?
Well, I'm sure this is kind of standard to have a additional insured.
Yeah, church has insurance that should cover us for our own events.
Yes, and if I may, yeah, Terry, that's a great question. We would still, if council wanted to move forward with granting the fee waiver, we would still have Pastor Pam fill out the applicable special event permit application, which would, require insurance and indemnification. So, yeah, that's a good question. And Mayor, if I may, I think your comment before was a good one. Kind of good track. And my question to council was going to be, and I'm not quite sure what council's going to want to do here, but does council prefer taking these on a case-by-case basis, or any interest in structuring a proposed motion that applies across the board to all churches and faith-based organizations? John, I think what you had proposed maybe was across the board for anybody and everybody, but I just wanted some clarity there.
Yeah, no, that was my fear, is that we could have anybody and everybody coming forward and asking for waivers. And I only think that would make sense if, similar to what Pam and the Church of San Juan's is proposing, that they can demonstrate that they can provide their own sound equipment, and that they're going to have enough people to organize the event and clean up after it and all that. And I do think it has to be case by case to a certain extent. I think given the circumstances and the times we're in, I think it makes sense to make an exception for these kinds of things. Again, as long as the groups can help us out and aren't asking for a whole lot of time and energy and cost from the town. I'll share with you, there's basically outlets all over the stage. Hooking up to power is not a problem. That's the simplest part of the equation, probably. So it sounds to me, it looks to me like there's consensus that this is an okay concept, and I guess I would potentially entertain a motion to approve the request from the Church of the San Juans and direct staff to, I guess, possibly administratively allow it for other faith-based organizations coordinated with the Church of the San Juans. But I'd still like to have, say that this is just for the months of July and August, for instance, and see how it goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Does that work for you, Pam and Preston?
Yeah, I got it. I knew she was going to do that.
Sounds good. So motion
Yeah.
made.
That works for me. And just to let you know, the only other church that I'm aware of that might have an interest, at least of today, is the Ridgway Community Church. And I've talked to Del Smith. He let me know that they were canceling their 5th of July. Indicated to me they might think about doing a Labor Day thing instead, and we'll work with them. But to date, that's the only other interested party I'm aware of.
Okay. And I don't know if they're the ones, there's a number of faith-based events that have happened in the park over the summers in recent years. Cowboy Up for Christ was one. I don't know if you've talked to Victoria down at the Christian Center. because I know
Yeah.
some of those events were theirs.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I've heard that those events have all been canceled this year.
okay, that's good to know. And Pam, I don't think it's on your shoulders to contact them.
Okay.
I mean, if you wanted to, of course, that's fine, but we're not asking you to do that.
And the approval through August makes a lot of sense. And then would I just come back through Preston to ask for an extension if it seems to be working?
Yeah. Preston, would we need to modify the motion to allow an administrative extension, or do you think it should come back to council?
You know, that.
No.
Oh, Pam's whispering in my ear. She's saying, yes, please give, allow staff the authority to be able to extend, you know, given where we're at with COVID and public health orders, et cetera. So if that's what you're getting at, then yes,
Yeah.
we agree with that.
Yep. Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Cheek,
Aye.
Grambly,
Aye.
Lakin. Oh, that's right. She's not there. I'm sorry. Meyer,
Aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson's not present.
Okay, so passes 4-0 on the president. Thanks, Pam.
I'm signing off to go celebrate by email with my worship team. Thank you much. We'll let you know how it goes.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Pam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, that takes us to item number 2, review and action on intergovernmental agreement related to distribution of CARES Act funds. Hopefully all you guys have had a chance to look at that in the packet.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll just make a couple remarks and really appreciate y'all taking the time to meet tonight. I know it's not easy to make time for special meetings always. So again, thanks for accommodating that. Before you, like Mayor was saying, is an IGA related to distribution of CARES Act funds between the town, City of Uray, and Uray County. I think many of you were on the last policy group meeting, work session, Zoom meeting call last Thursday where this was reviewed. DOLA is actually the program administering this coronavirus relief fund program, and the state is appropriating just over $420,000 of CARES Act funding to the county, using 2019 Census Bureau population figures to set the funding pool cap for allocations within county borders or boundaries. And it may have gone over this during the policy group meeting, but for the general public, they may actually watch this on YouTube or something like that. In order for us or any other municipality, for that matter, to complete the one-time opt-in form in the DOLA grants portal, we need to have an agreement, which is why this is before you right now, in place with our respective county for the drawdown of funds. So on a per capita basis, and what's identified in the IGA for the town is just north of $91,000. Just keep in mind that our COVID-19 related expenses, to date have been very minimal outside of personnel costs, like very, very minimal. So when I say personnel costs, I'm talking the time, particularly for that Shane and I have spent, at the unified command level and in other meetings and stuff. It's just an example. Also keep in mind, we're entitled to up to that amount, but only if we spend it. They don't just give us that $91,000. We request reimbursement as we go for the unbudgeted COVID-19 related expenses that are eligible based on the U.S. Treasury guidelines, is I think what they characterize it as. There's a whole list on the website, very thorough. And the kind of neat thing is that eligible expenses, date back to March 1st. I think it's March 1st, and it goes all the way to the end of the calendar year. And the reason we're here tonight is because the opt-in period ends on July 7th, just shy of the next regular meeting. So again, sorry to put y'all out, but thank you for being here, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Preston.
Yeah, I know that Ridgway City met on this, I think, earlier today. Do we know what, if they've approved it or had any changes they were requesting?
You know, Russ, that's a great question. I believe you're referring to the county. The county had their meeting today to
Excuse me. Okay.
to consider the IGA. I tried to get on there. I was having trouble actually getting on their county meeting. They were trying this hybrid approach. That's a little off topic, but I had trouble getting on there, so I wasn't able to see or hear if it got approved. I'll text or email Connie to see if it went through. I imagine it did, but I shouldn't assume anything. And then the city of Ridgway, I think, is I don't remember what the consent or what their thought was there, but I think close to July 1st, June 29th, I think, is when they're going to meet to consider it.
That was my recollection too. Ridgway was meeting next week.
So Russ, I'll find out. I believe it was most likely passed, but you never know.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions about this? Comments?
Could this be used for short change in sales tax?
I don't
No.
think.
No.
No, you mean kind of, just like backfilling any lost sales tax revenue?
Right, like an average or back. Exactly, Preston. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. No. Great question. No. The answer is no. I don't. That's not an eligible expense. I'm sure many places would like that to be, but it's not eligible for that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about how you just simply can't use it to backfill lost revenues in your general fund. It has to be direct expenses.
COVID related. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion? Preston has, as usual, kindly given us a draft motion to make.
I can do it. I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement related to distribution of CARES Act funds. Thank you, Preston.
I second that.
Motion made by Terry, seconded by Kevin. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilors Grambly,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimous based on who's here. Thanks for
Sweet.
that. That takes us to item number 3. The new water meter handheld and water meter discussion. Chase, are you going to take that for us?
I sure can. So this is in front of you here today. Sorry, was that? Come on.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, this is in front of you here today. So the water meters we currently use are being discontinued. That doesn't mean they're broken. Doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to work. But it does mean that we need to transfer over to a new model in the future when we're putting them in the ground. So we're still putting in our old ones. They're getting more difficult to find right now. But along with this change also comes the need to update our handheld, is what you call it, to be able to read the meters. The new meters will operate on a slightly different radio. It's called an M radio versus what we have in the ground right now is an R radio. So the new handheld will be able to read both meters, both radios, until we get the entire system transferred over to those newer meters and newer radios for communication. These will be smart meters we're putting in as well. Council in the past has expressed a great desire to get smart meters in the ground, and I think this is a great first step for that. We won't, because this is there, we won't have that capability until everyone in town has that meter in the ground. But that this is the first step in getting that there. And as well as this will allow us, there's something in this, there's a technology in this, what's in front of you here called VGB, and that will allow us to read them and be more on top of these meters and be able to read them whenever we would like, as well as be able to get notified for leaks whenever we want. Again, once we get our system updated with the new meters entirely. So some of this I think is just, or a lot of this is a transition. It's a migration we need to make to be able to still provide meters in the ground and be able to read them with our customers. Our handheld that we have right now is been giving us difficulties, and we've been holding off on upgrading it or buying a new one because we don't want to buy a new one if it's just going to be obsolete and we can't use it on the new radios. So we're waiting to put this in front of you here to hopefully get all this sorted out. That may or may not be a lot for you guys. Feel free to ask any questions you would like about there. I'll answer them best I can.
Great. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thanks. Sorry.
Eric.
No apology necessary. I'm sure you've had a crazy day.
Yeah, crazy couple.
So we've already dealt with the Church of San Juan's request and the IGA. We're on the third item, the new meter technology and handheld.
Well, you guys have been crooking along here.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions for Chase?
Chase, this is Terry. Explain the smart capabilities. What does that mean exactly?
So these new meters, they'll have the ability to limit a flow if a client would want. Say you don't want more than 1 gallon per minute. You can program that into the meter and you won't get more than 1 gallon a minute. It has leak detection. So when they're running, say something happens, it suspects a leak, it'll automatically notify us once it's set up again. Down the road, it'll automatically notify us instead of that person not finding out until the beginning of the month when they get their bill. We'll hopefully be able to capture these big leaks within a couple days of them happening versus weeks of them happening. What else is on that smart meter? I'm going to blank on some things there, Terry.
So on the leak issue, just being a technical geek, is that just some sort of a threshold for the amount of use in a given time period?
I think I would have to look into
potentially cause you...
Yeah, I'd have to look into the finer details of how it's triggered. I think there's two quantifiers in there. One, if it's just above the average usage for that meter, I think it kind of tracks its usage, and all of a sudden it creates a flow that's kind of an anomaly. I think it'll trigger it, as well as if it's registering water continuously. So if all of a sudden you have a small leak, it's only 1 gallon a minute, but it's going for 24 hours a day, it'll trigger it then, because it's like, very few people use 1 gallon a minute continuously for 24 hours a day. So those are two instances.
Stuck toilet, yeah.
Right, that's leaky toilets, those kind of things. Right.
So it has the ability to program those thresholds so you don't get nuisance alarms, essentially?
I believe so, yes. It'll also have the ability of recording hourly data and hourly usage. So you can, break it up more by time. And there's some people, I think you guys do this, Terry, at SMPA, where with some of your meters where you can say, oh, how much electricity am I using right this second or within this hour block, and someone can run their dryer in that hour and get an idea of how much electricity it used.
Yeah, we have hourly data. One of the, just as an FYI, one of the sensitivities of the use of the term smart has caused us a lot of problems, because people think that, these in particular are radio based. The smart meters that SMPA has sends a signal over the same line where the electricity comes in. So there's no MF and there's no radio signal. So has there been any perceived pushback over the use of the radio, the radio signals, the RFI, which is the buzz term?
Honestly, I'm not sure that people are aware that we've been using a radio-based reader for a while. And I was going to bring up the same point, Terry. I think it's important. I almost think we should try not to use the word smart meter in this case.
Yeah, it has a negative connotation to it.
It certainly does. And understood. I'm not downplaying anybody's concerns. But these, as you say, these are radio-based. They're not, it's not EMF, or it's a form of EMF, but it's radio, just like a truck driver would use or something like that. So I mean, at least I'm assuming that's right, Chase, but the question I had was, so are you saying that eventually when all the meters are switched over, that individual customers can actually access some of this data over the internet, or do you know?
I believe so. I'm not 100% there, Clark, Mr. Mayor, but I believe they will be able to. We will be able to at any time if anyone gives us a call and says, hey, what's my usage to date this month? What's, expressing any concerns, we would be able to log in, look at it. I believe that would be an extra step. I don't know if there would be a cost associated with that and just setting up a public user and having individuals log in.
Okay.
Well, from my own experience and to John's point, sometimes too much information causes you a lot of grief. So having public access to that information may cause a lot of phone calls. So if you can tiptoe into that a little bit, and, see where what makes sense. But I wouldn't certainly announce the public access to the information off the bat until you've fully, experienced and vetted all this. Just from my own experience, I get a lot of nuisance calls when people have access to too much information.
Right.
I hear you and completely understand that concern.
Another question I had, sort of one of the more obvious questions is, so this is essentially a request to approve an expenditure of almost $28,000. I assume this comes right out of the water fund?
Yes, sir. The Water Enterprise Fund, and I have an email from you, Russ. You were asking a similar question about, budget ramifications given all things COVID-19. So I imagine that's where we're going to end up going. But yes, to answer your question, paid out of the Water Enterprise Fund, it would fall in the category of non-appropriated expenditure. And obviously it's over the $25,000 threshold, which is why we're before you now, as the procurement policy requires. And I think it was in early April, you all should remember, we went largely line item by line item through the general fund budget and the water fund and even the sewer fund a little bit to look through some of the various projects and capital expenditures. Council elected to freeze a number of items for the time being, just given where we were at with the response to the pandemic. Specific to the water fund, it was $250,000. The council, I'm using the word froze and I'm using air quotes, so froze. And with I guess in the adopted 2020 budget, water fund expenditures total $1,044,398. So that comes out to, with the $250,000 hold, almost a 24% reduction in the water fund. And there were also a number of items that council decided could potentially be reduced in scope and cost if deemed necessary by staff. If you remember, kind of graying out some of those items. So I'm just trying to kind of do a recap of where we were at with the budget there. I'll let Pam kind of talk to the overall health of the water fund and whether or not it can accommodate a non-appropriated expenditure, a non-appropriated expenditure such as this one. But I feel confident that it can. But again, Pam knows the budget much better than I do.
So I'm sorry for being late to this conversation, but can I just for my quick information, just asking Chase the question as to really how urgent are you feeling like this is?
So we, the meters that we currently put in the ground, I've shared, they've discontinued, do not make those anymore.
Okay.
So we need a new meter. We're scrounging for a supplier to put them in there, as well as there's kind of two components to each meter. One's the meter itself and one's the radio that communicates. The meters have a longer lifespan, and those meters and those radios have a battery life of about 10 years. Right now, we have a number. We have, I want to say, close to 20 radios that we have that are out of battery that we are having to manually read, and we were hoping to get this discussion through before purchasing new ones, because we don't want to purchase these old radios to have them be outdated as soon as, a week later.
Okay.
We are actively holding and kind of struggling to fill a few of these realms with this.
Okay, thanks, Chase. That was kind of the gist I got from the memo. So just wanted to a little quick memory refresh.
Yeah, no problem.
And you literally came in right at the beginning of this item, Eric. So
Oh.
Was somebody else about to say something?
Of course it's like tough to take money out of the water fund right now when I know we're anticipating some conversation in our next regular meeting about rates increasing, but it does also sound to me like this is kind of inevitable and not in our control. And I'm interested in this people have asked for more information and more timely information about their water use. And it sounds like this is the most financially savvy kind of method to start building in that capacity, and that it's only going to get more expensive in the future. And so although it's a tough call, I do think that we need to take advantage of this pass through that the supplier is offering and kind of head in the direction that our constituents have asked for, which is to have more information and more actionable, timely information about their water use. So,
well, the other thing, we're talking about the water rates. This is the kind of exact reason that we felt like we had to increase the water rates.
Totally. Yeah.
So,
I guess I have one other question regarding this. The concept of the new technology and leak detection and the discounted readers all sounds great. What does this do to the town as far as any new developments that are coming in? Is this an additional cost for these new meters that we have planned for or not as these new developments come along?
No, so right now, Russ, whenever a tap happens, whether it be a single home or an entire development, when someone is building on that lot, they are required to purchase that initial meter and radio. So right now, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but all the parts that go into building the meter can, putting the meter in, doing those are purchased and reimbursed from the person creating the service. These meters are very comparably priced to the ones we've had and used for years. I think the radio is maybe $10 more, and the meter itself might be about $5 more. If that, they are very comparable pricing to the ones we have in the ground and have been using.
So would we anticipate a change in tap fees, or is it close enough that we wouldn't really mess with it?
No, so one, so there's the tap fee, the system investment fee for $6,000, and that's just a general system investment, keeping your distribution water plant running and operating, and new improvements going in. The meter itself, and the saddle and the tap to tap into the main line, that runs about $1,700. It's a direct pass through. We purchase the parts, we make sure that it's done right, do the labor, and then we just charge the client or the customer resident a flat fee for cost of parts and hours to put it in. So it's a direct pass through from us for the cost of these meters to whoever's needing it and requiring it at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Also, Russ, the taps can be purchased at any time. They can be purchased at the time usually they are required at the time development is approved now, or a resident can purchase at any time. But the meter isn't purchased until the time that it's installed.
Okay.
And we bill at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I do think this is another one of those that, $28,000 expenditure at this point with our budgetary challenges seems maybe a little scary. I think I think all things presented as they are, it's kind of one that you can't really say no to in a way,
Right.
in a lot of ways. So does anybody else have comments or questions for either?
I mean, it's kind of like when your car breaks down and you still got to get to work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that and the future cost savings, in light
Yeah.
of the long-term effect of our predicament. So it seems to me we got to hit a moving target.
And it's an upgrade. It's like getting brand new water pump and carburetor out of the deal, in your analogy, Eric.
Appears to be the easiest transition too, which is good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Thank God they don't make carburetors anymore.
I do for some motorcycles.
So
All
give
right,
us- are
well-
you ready for a movement?
Yeah, I think so.
I move to approve the deviation from procurement procedures and authorize staff to purchase the Census iPearl water meter handheld package for 27,615.29 as described in the staff memo.
Great, thanks.
I did.
Tessa makes the second. Motion's made and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Counselors Cheek,
Aye.
Grambly,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Great, thanks, everybody. So that's passed unanimously. That brings us to the last item on our agenda. Review and action on Town of Ridgway amended electronic participation policy for regular and special meetings. Preston?
Yes, sir. And thanks, Chase, for being here and giving that presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
So this is just follow-up from the last council meeting. Council asked staff to modify the electronic participation policy to allow for quasi-judicial hearings for new matters that are subject to referendum to be initiated. So that modification has been made, run by Bo. Got the sign off from Bo. And I forgot to say this at the forefront, but obviously Bo wasn't able to make it tonight. But he was fine with the amended version before you. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. Anybody here have any questions, comments? This is a pretty much no-brainer.
Just thanks for getting it together. And yeah, it sounds like the right thing to do to keep the people's business moving. So
Okay,
I move to adopt Town of Ridgway amended electronic participation policy for regular and special meetings.
Second.
I think Eric got the second on that one. Motion's made by Russ, seconded by Eric. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Counselors Cheek,
aye.
Grambly,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Great, thanks. That wraps up this special meeting. Great work, everybody.
Thank you all very much for taking the time. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
No
sorry I
problem.
was
Thank-
late.
No worries, we understand. So unless I hear objection, I will call this meeting adjourned.
Have a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
night.
All.
Good
Talk
seeing
to you.
everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.
Hey, Pam,
Yes,
do you want me to come down tomorrow and sign some things?
that would be nice.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Why, yeah, I've got a big pile.
Okay.
Why don't I text you about a time?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks,
Um,
John.
Morning is best for me, just so you know. I've got a little window from 2 to 3, but whatever works. So we could do it at Thursday sometime too, whatever.
Okay, I'll text you in a little bit.
I'll wait for a text. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. We'll talk soon.
Good night.